I'm doing this slideless because in talking about presenting design, there's nothing I necessarily needed to show you. So I thought I'll do this the old-fashioned way with index cards as prompts, just on screen in front of you. As I said, and as you've probably seen from the schedule, the topic today is how to present design work, and also alongside that is how to get great feedback. Because the point of presenting design work is not just to show off your work and to show how amazing you are. The point of presenting design work is to get the whole team involved and make sure that that everybody's able to contribute, not just the designers. And the reason that this is super important and that is worth actually putting some thought into how you might present is that a lot of the decisions in a project really hinge on those individual moments of you showing off the work, often to a client, often to a stakeholder, and them understanding it well enough and being able to ask the right kinds of questions so that work it gets taken forward. It's like presenting sometimes just seems like, oh yeah, we'll do. We've got the end of the sprint. We'll show the stuff, but it's really, really, really crucial because if you muck up a presentation and the people on the other end of it don't understand what you're trying to communicate, that work can't go ahead. But it's not something that we're necessarily taught. I don't see it in design books, and I don't think it's covered thoroughly in things like boot camps and design education. So it's worth putting a bit of thought into. So in this little short talk, I'm going to cover three things. I'm going to talk about how to get your audience ready for a presentation, how to actually do the presentation itself, and how to get people to give you great quality feedback, not just feedback based on their opinions and random thoughts and, telling you to make the buttons more square, more round, more blue, more pink, more left, more right, more centred, all the things the crazy things that people give you feedback on, but to teach them how to give you really solid feedback. The thing I'm not talking about specifically is how to work with your design colleagues. This is very much about presenting things to stakeholders and clients. You'll use it, you'll see as I go through it, but you'll use a different approach if you're hanging out with your design friends and kind of sketching through thoughts and working on something. This is much more about showing off a piece of work. So first step happens well and truly before you present and actually isn't about making up the slide deck or setting up your prototype. The first step is understanding who will be in the room, whether this is a virtual or a physical room. You cannot present well and communicate well, which is what this is all about. You can't communicate well if you don't understand the people on the other side and what their concerns are and what they might be wondering about and all the things that they ask you about. So as a part of your preparation, make sure you understand who is going to be in that presentation, what their role is and what the things that matter to them are. Then in the presentation itself, the main step of setting up that audience is to get them ready to give you good feedback, to get them ready to listen and be able to contribute well. And the thing about design presentations is most of the audience don't do these very often. They don't get presented too much. They might not have worked in a tech project before. They're usually kind of subject matter experts or business owners, and they don't know what to do. So you have to be really explicit about what you do. If you don't tell them what to do, this is where they will tell you any opinion that they think that may not be very useful or may be unrelated. So at the beginning of a presentation, before you start showing your work, give people jobs to do in that room. Be really specific about it, and make sure those jobs relate to their expertise. So if you've got the owner of a business or the most senior client, when you introduce what you're going to be talking about, say to them, like, explicitly, could you please look out for these things related to your expertise? Could you see if this is going to achieve what you want for your business? If you've got tech folks in the room, ask them to do something specific to their expertise. Could you please look at this and make sure that it's going to be technically possible? If you've got marketing folks in the room, ask them to do something specific to their expertise. Could you please keep an eye out for whether this fits properly into the broader marketing strategy? If you give people really specific jobs, then when you're showing through your designs, they will know what to look for, and they will be looking for those things. It's a great way to use their expertise and avoid people giving you random opinions that you can't use. And that's, of course, why you need to know who's in the room, so that you can ask them to watch based on their experiences. Presenting the thing itself, the very first thing you will want to do is explain the business problem that you're solving. Make sure that you have given that context. Don't just launch into screens. Remind them that this is the thing that we were focusing on. This is the business problem to be solved, or the user problem to be solved, so that they start getting that context of what you're looking at. Also, let them know what the scope is. Are you showing this part of the process or this part? Are you 3/4 of the way through? Is this the very first thing you're showing? Help them understand what they're about to look at, again, so that their focus is in the right place. The other good thing about explaining the business problem or the user problem that you're solving helps them understand and have confidence in you, and know that you know what you're solving for. And sometimes that is much harder than others. I know I've been in tons of situations where the business problem or user problem we were solving for wasn't super clear, and sometimes it's actually the first presentation and the fact that nobody can articulate that that really highlights it. So I can be kind of flippantly say, just do that, but I know that sometimes it's a bit harder. So we've kind of got the room a bit ready. They know what they're doing there. They know what they're looking at. It's ready for you to actually show the thing that you came up with to solve that business problem. A thing that I see designers often do, and the reason why I'm going to say something that might seem a bit odd, is I often see designers show everything that they've thought about in the last period of time. They go, okay, well, here's a business problem. We did this and then we did that, but that didn't work so well, so we threw it away. So here's another version of it. Or I've got 3 versions. Here's one with tabs. Here's one with a carousel. Here's another one. If you do that, the audience are like, oh, what am I looking at? Instead of showing all of your thoughts, just show the final, most bestest thing that you are recommending. Show your final result and don't show any of the workings through it. So I do this talk a bit, and when I just say, show what you came up with, people are like, yeah, duh. Don't show all of those workings. People will often say to me, yeah, but I've got to show all the workings so I show my value. And my answer to that is, your value is the end result. If people are wondering about alternative approaches, or did you try a thing? Oh, yeah, by the way, there's always a cat in my presentations. Here's today's. They jump up onto the desk and walk across because they know that they'll get pats. This is cutie one. He's going on the floor now. And then I have to go, like, where was I up to? Yes, just if people have questions about how you got to where you got to. They will ask you in the presentation, and the answers will be more useful to them when they put it into context of their own question. All the time they're like, you're just showing them variations, they don't know where to focus. So only show the end result. When you show this end result, show it as a person doing a thing. Don't do what I call a real estate tour. Don't do, there's the logo, there's the top navigation, here's a drop down, there's a carousel, you can see the products, here's a filter. Instead, say, so the user or business problem this is solving is that a person needs to do a thing. They have some stuff going on beforehand, and then they do this, and then they do that, and then they do this, and then they do that, and then they get to the end of it. Don't show it just straight through in a line. Show the success path once without any kind of variations or mistakes or going back or backtracking. Then do it again. And that also sounds a little silly to present something twice. But the reason is the first time you show something, for the audience is going to be quite fast. They're going to be like, whoosh, a thing just went past my face. You've told them what to focus on. You've thrown a bunch of stuff up and it's too quick, no matter how slowly you say it. If you go through twice, so a person doing a thing, don't necessarily use exactly the same words because that does sound like you're repeating yourself. Do a tiny variation. Like if you're doing a product site, first they can go buy the cheese, then they can go buy the tomato sauce. Vary it a tiny bit, but the second time round, they'll be like, okay, I've got this. I know what I'm looking at. I know what's about to happen next. I wanted to focus on that thing again. Yes, I can see it and go. So it's a much, it can stick in their head. Only after you've done that a couple of times, then go back and show any variations, any place where people might, get partway through and need to backtrack or change an entry or, change a filter or all the kinds of things that can happen in the middle of a process. Another a good opportunity for that kind of third pass is explain any areas where user research really bumps up what you've shown, and you can also use that kind of third pass as a way of showing something like alternate use of a technology like a screen reader or a magnifier or a mobile screen. So you can show that you get the variations in there as well. But by the time people have seen it a couple of times, they'll at least know what they're looking at. Don't ever do there's the navigation, there's the logo. What that does is people focus on those things, and what you want them to focus on is that story. If you can present consistently as a user doing a thing, your stakeholders will talk about users doing things instead of pieces of screen. You'll teach them over time that that's how we talk about this stuff. That's how we work through design, is users doing things. So the most important part of the presentation is the feedback part. Most importantly, I don't like giving don'ts, but sometimes don'ts are easier to remember than do's. Don't ever say, so what do you think? If you ask what people think, guess what they're going to tell you? They're going to tell you what they think, and they're going to forget all the good work that you did to ask them to focus in a particular area. So instead, it's natural for us to do because we want to know that people like what we did. If anybody was actually near me, I could walk out here and go, "What do you think? How's my talk?" But instead, wrap that back and say, "Okay, I asked you at the beginning to focus on these things, questions and feedback, and please make sure it's concrete and specific, and I'd love to hear examples." So make sure that people have a way of giving you feedback that isn't just what they think, that it really focuses on what you ask them to do at the beginning, and really ask them to give you examples, not just to say, I think this thing wasn't good, or I think this thing should be a different way, to give you much more concrete and specific examples. That will teach them that it will teach them how to think about feedback. It will teach them that they have to think about what they're telling you. They can't just kind of flippantly tell you that, what they do or don't like. And with examples, you learn more that you can put into the design process. I know from working with lots of teams, what people often do in presentations is get the audience, the stakeholders, to write things on sticky notes as you go through the presentation, and then kind of stick them on the wall later on and have a discussion about it. I strongly recommend not doing that. And the reason that I do is because when you ask people to think of something quickly in the room, you only get really shallow feedback. I mean, you've asked them to do a ton of cognitive work. They're seeing something they haven't seen before. They're probably doing a process that they're not super comfortable with. They're learning how to do all this. And now you want them to write on sticky notes and think and understand how the thing you've shown actually is going to work in their world. You can only kind of get shallow feedback. And the thing that happens if you do this is that the feedback will come at you later on. It might come at you in the next presentation. It might come at you in between, but it won't be there at the time. And this is what happens to me when I'm a stakeholder. I walk out of the room and then I'm like, yeah, now I've thought about that. That's not going to work in that situation. I've got to think about the data. And then I want to give feedback later. So I strongly suggest using a feedback process where you don't try to capture and resolve everything right now. The time when that can work is when you've been working with a client for a long time and you're all comfortable with it. Allow time in your process to then give people the prototype link, for example, send them some scenarios that they can work through themselves, give them an opportunity to look at the work in more detail and reflect on it properly. If you can do that, then they will be able to spend a bit more time on it. They will be able to go deeper. They'll be able to give you much more concrete feedback with examples that you can then use in to further the design. It does take longer, of course, but shorter isn't always better, where longer gives better quality. You don't want to give them weeks. You only want to give them a couple of days, enough time that they can reflect and give you some examples. The very last part of this feedback process that, again, is really important is making sure you communicate back to people. Another thing I often see with teams and that destroys the relationship is when clients will give feedback, whether it's good or bad, and the design team go away, make decisions about it and don't ever tell anyone. In particular, we often make decisions to not do a thing that we've been asked. You do need to be able to collect the feedback, make decisions about it, think about, yes, we can do that. It's fast. We'll put that on the backlog and do it soon. We won't do those things. The things that you've made a decision not to do, you do need to be able to communicate those back, and you do need to communicate back your rationale. If you don't do that, then your clients will feel like you're not listening to them because you're not, and they will stop actually giving good feedback. They'll return to combative behaviours because they want to get heard and that you don't seem like you're listening. It can be hard to say, we heard you, we decided no for these reasons, but you have to do it. Your clients will respect you a lot more if you can explain your rationale for decisions like that. Look, sometimes depending on your project structure, they might be the ones making those decisions, of course, but there's a lot of decisions that we make as design and build teams ourselves. So let me summarise quickly. Prepare ahead by knowing your audience and give them jobs to do in the presentation, nice, clear jobs and a really good focus. Start by presenting the outcome of the work, not all the thoughts you've had. Show a person doing a thing, and teach your clients to give good, concrete, specific feedback with examples and explain your rationale for decision-making to them. And I promise that you will get much better quality feedback over time if you can use this process with your clients. Nobody will ever say again, please can you make the buttons corners more rounded?